Howdy, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment if you like the video. Please note, this video contains violent content which may be too intense for some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Now back to the story. A young man with striking purple eyes awakens in an abyss of emptiness, confusion washing over him like a tide. Where am I? Or rather, who am I? He murmurs, his voice echoing into the void. His mind is a blank slate. No name, no past, just an overwhelming sense of loss reflected in his light-skinned face. Glancing down, he sees his hands are shackled, heavy chains clinking with every slight movement. The stripes of his prisoner's outfit make him look like a living zebra, a figure trapped and marked. Driven by a desperate instinct to survive, he begins wandering aimlessly through the endless, desolate expanse. Hours pass. At least, they feel like hours, though time seems meaningless in this place. Exhausted, he gasps for air, his energy depleted. How long have I been walking? He wonders, sweat trickling down his brow. Then, in the distance, he spots something, or rather, someone. Relief surges through him, and he runs toward the figure with hope rekindled. But as he approaches, his hope turns to horror. Before him lies the lifeless body of an orange-haired girl, her stomach gruesomely torn open, blood splattered across the ground. Terror grips him as he stares at the scene, his heart pounding in his chest. Where am I? What kind of place is this? He whispers, his voice trembling. But then, as if a switch is flipped in his mind, the fear and disgust vanish, replaced by a chilling numbness. A hand suddenly rests on his shoulder, and he spins around, his movements sharp and defensive. Standing behind him is a man with piercing blue eyes, dressed in the same prisoner's attire. "Did you do this?" the blue-eyed stranger demands, his tone cold and accusing. The purple-eyed man, caught off guard, shakes his head vehemently. "No, it wasn't me," he stammers, panic rising. The stranger narrows his eyes, scrutinizing the scene. "There's no way you did this with bare hands," he mutters. The purple-eyed man, now desperate for answers, asks if the stranger knows where they are. But the blue-eyed man shakes his head, frustration evident. "I don't remember anything either." "And chains? What chains?" He looks down at his own unbound hands, perplexed. Suddenly, a mechanical voice cuts through the tension, echoing around them. Participants identified, the voice announces as two pieces of paper float down from the sky. The blue-eyed man shouts, "Who's there?" While the purple-eyed man cautiously picks up one of the papers. It reads, Reiyan Asura, 19 years old, in search of his older sister. "Is this me?" he wonders, a sense of unease settling in. The other paper reveals the identity of the blue-eyed man. Cho, 35 years old, married, father of 3. Shock and confusion grip Cho as he processes this information. "What the hell is this? I don't remember any of this," he yells, his frustration boiling over. Before they could fully comprehend the situation, the mechanical voice interrupted once more. "Weapons provided to participants," it announced. Almost immediately, Reiyan and Cho felt a burning sensation at their necks, and to Reiyan's shock, a red sword materialized in his hand. The voice continued with an ominous tone. "You have 5 minutes to execute your opponent." Reiyan's heart pounded as he noticed Cho now, wielding a pair of sharp sai. The voice then added, "Should you fail, your suit will release an electrical current that will end your life." Fear began to set in as Reiyan stared at Cho, who appeared just as terrified. "This can't be real," Reiyan whispered, trying to make sense of the situation. Cho, his voice strained with urgency, pointed to the dead girl's body and yelled, "Look around! This is no joke. They erased our memories and trapped us in these suits. I have a family. I can't afford to lose." Despite the tremor in his voice, Cho's determination was clear. Reiyan quickly realized that he had no choice but to defend himself. As they engaged in combat, Reiyan noticed something peculiar. Glowing strings of light seemed to emanate from Cho, almost as if they were guiding his every move. A voice inside Reiyan's head urged him, "Survive," as he narrowly evaded Cho's attacks. However, one of Cho's strikes landed, slashing Reiyan's leg and causing him to stumble in pain. Desperation surged through Reiyan as he saw Cho preparing for a final, decisive strike. His mind raced, and then he noticed one of the glowing strings pointing directly at Cho's neck. "It's him or me," Reiyan thought, the voice in his head compelling him to act. With Cho just inches away, Reiyan moved with surprising speed, countering Cho's attack with a slash to his neck. Blood splattered, and Cho collapsed, pleading for mercy. Reiyan, now focused on survival, tightened his grip on the chains and ended Cho's life. Breathing heavily, Reiyan stood over Cho's lifeless body, a cold emptiness settling within him. "Why do I feel nothing?" he murmured to himself as he tucked Cho's paper into his pocket. "I need answers, whoever did this. I'll make them pay." Suddenly, a brilliant light descended from above, and a figure bathed in a radiant purple aura appeared. The figure's voice resonated with authority as it declared, "Participant 305081 is the victor, Reiyan Asura." Reiyan, overwhelmed and bewildered, looked up at the figure as it introduced itself, "I am God." Forced to bow before this celestial being, Reiyan's mind was flooded with questions. "So, this is what God looks like," he thought, his heart racing as he faced the one responsible for this nightmare. The figure, exuding an overwhelming sense of power, gazed down at Reiyan with a mix of amusement and indifference. Reiyan, trembling from the recent events, recalled the fight he had just endured. Yet, a strange sense of satisfaction began to well up within him. With a slight, almost chilling smile, Reiyan looked up at the figure and whispered, "It felt good." God's amusement grows as a smirk forms on his lips. "Your mind betrays your words," he remarks, his voice echoing with unyielding power. Reiyan, adrenaline still coursing through him, demands, "What is this place?" God, unfazed, responds, "This is a realm of my design, crafted specifically for this game. 2 million souls were brought here." The weight of this revelation crashes down on Reiyan. Millions, like him, forced into these brutal trials. Desperation drives Reiyan to question further. "Why can't I remember anything? Why was I chosen?" God's answer is chilling. 2 million souls. One game. One wish. His gaze, eerily similar to Reiyan's, locks onto him as he continues, "In this game, only one will survive to claim the wish. The rest will perish." Reiyan tries to ask more, but finds his voice silenced, his throat constricted by an unseen force. God, with a casual raise of his hand, commands silence. "Do not interrupt," he warns, his tone leaving no room for defiance. With a mere flick of his finger, Reiyan is forced to bow lower, powerless against the deity's overwhelming presence. God continues, boasting of his omnipotence. "I created the universe and all within it. I spare one wish for the victor of the God game. One will claim it, the others will fall." Frustration boils over as Reiyan shouts, "Why? Why are you doing this?" God's reply is devoid of any warmth, for entertainment. The cold truth of the situation hits Reiyan, realizing the cruel nature of the game he's now a part of. Unfazed by Reiyan's distress, God adds, "As you progress, you will uncover more about the game, about me, and about yourself. Your sole purpose here is to survive." With that, God vanishes, leaving Reiyan alone with countless unanswered questions. Suddenly, he's transported into a room filled with other participants of the God game. The chains on his wrists are gone, but the unease remains. As he surveys the room, he notices everyone is dressed in the same prisoner's garb, their faces reflecting the same horror and confusion he feels. Among them, he spots a child, and the stark realization sets in. Each one of them has taken a life to be here. Reiyan clenches his fists, a newfound resolve hardening within him. "If I'm to find answers, I must survive this twisted game. And that means everyone here is my enemy." He understands that in this survival game, the weak are the first to fall. "But I killed Tenjin," he thinks. "Doesn't that make me strong?" Just then, a robotic figure approaches, its movements mechanical and unsettling. "Are you ready for the second round?" it asks in a grating, artificial voice. Reiyan, startled, nods slightly. The robot introduces itself. I am Mr. Yura, the facilitator for the next round. Reiyan, more fixated on the fact that the robot has no mouth yet speaks, yells, "Where the hell are we?" A typical bully among the group interrupts, telling Reiyan that questioning Yura is pointless. They've already tried. The yellow-haired man, identifying himself as Yuran, sizes up Reiyan, curious about his story, but Reiyan, still dazed, has no answers to give. Yuran, with a sly grin, mutters something about God telling them all the same thing and introduces himself. I'm Yuran. Let's hope we get through this together. Suddenly, a sharp pain pierces Reiyan's chest, as if he's been struck, but there's no visible wound. What's happening? He wonders, panic rising. Yuran, noticing Reiyan's discomfort, smirks menacingly. What's your name? He asks, but Reiyan, sensing something is off, grows suspicious. Is this magic? Reiyan ponders, remembering God's overwhelming powers. If powers like his exist, maybe. But before Yuran can push further, a masked man steps in, interrupting Yuran's bullying. Yuran, playing innocent, backs off, claiming he was just testing Reiyan to see if he was a worthy partner for the next round. The masked man, unamused, tells Yuran to find someone else. Turning to Reiyan, he says, "You'll be my partner." Reiyan, taken aback, wonders why the masked man would choose him, especially when he hasn't displayed any special skills. Introducing himself as Takeda Shinjin, the masked man shakes hands with Reiyan and urges him to move quickly to the next round. As they walk together, Reiyan asks, "Why did you choose me?" Shinjin's reply is calm and calculated. "Because your eyes, they look just like God's." Shinjin continues, "Everyone in this room is hiding their abilities. In the God game, everyone is an enemy, but I decided to break that barrier. I need to trust someone, even if it's blind trust." He pauses, then adds, "But if you become a liability, I won't hesitate to cut you off." Reiyan, stunned by Shinjin's honesty, realizes that this partnership might be his best shot at survival. This guy, he's too honest, Reiyan thinks, as they prepare to enter the next round, their fate hanging in the balance. As they enter the next round, a blinding light spills into the room, revealing a hot chick and an old man standing before them. Reiyan quickly sizes them up, thinking the old man shouldn't even be in a game like this. Shinjin, ever cold and calculating, turns to Reiyan and asks, "Which one do we kill first?" The old man tries to initiate conversation, asking if they know what this round is about, but Shinjin cuts him off, warning them not to take another step. The old man, ignoring Shinjin's warning, introduces himself as Jiren, and the chick reveals her name is Sarah. Suddenly, the room is bathed in a radiant golden light, and a voice echoes through the space, "Welcome to the second round, participants." The air feels charged as another figure, resembling Yura but with a more authoritative presence, materializes before them. The figure begins to outline the rules of the next challenge. Each team must possess a ball that grants 1 point for every second it's held. The game will stretch over 15 intense minutes, with the team holding the most points by the end declared the winner. However, there's a dangerous twist. If the ball drops, everyone in the game will die. The voice adds this ominous detail with a chilling calm, underlining the gravity of the situation. Anything is permitted to win. With the stakes clear, Sarah wastes no time, instantly summoning her weapon, her eyes filled with determination. Reiyan, however, stands confused. Everyone else seems to know how to conjure their weapons, but he's never been taught this vital skill. Sensing his unease, Yura glances at Reiyan and comments with a touch of intrigue, "Interesting. If God chose to hide the rules from you, it's not my place to interfere." The words linger in the air as the game begins. Frustrated by the constant twists and feeling as if the game is rigged against him, Reiyan curses under his breath. Every round has thrown unexpected challenges his way. Meanwhile, Yuran, eyes locked on Jiren, the elderly man, charges forward, intent on securing an easy kill. But Sarah intercepts, her weapon clashing against Yuran's with a fierce resolve. Reiyan, observing Jiren's frail appearance, assumes the old man must be the weakest link. Driven by this assumption, he launches an attack, declaring, "The ball is mine." But Jiren is no easy prey. Instead of retreating, he commends Reiyan for his bravery but warns him against rushing and unarmed. To drive the point home, Jiren thrusts his staff forward, unleashing a burst of flames. Reiyan, in that split second, sees the familiar strings of light, his unique ability to perceive paths of opportunity. Realizing that sacrificing his arm could lead to victory, he roars with determination, pushing through the flames and landing a powerful blow on Jiren's face, sending the old man crashing to the ground. Yet, despite having the upper hand, Reiyan hesitates. He decides to spare Jiren, opting to take the ball instead. As the adrenaline courses through him, Reiyan's latent power becomes clearer, his ability to sense and exploit opportunities, almost as if guided by an instinct to kill, gives him a significant edge. But Shinjin, looming over Jiren's fallen form, isn't as merciful. He demands that Reiyan finish the job, his tone leaving no room for debate. However, before Reiyan can act, Sarah seizes the moment, using the distraction to her advantage. With lethal precision, she drives her weapon into Shinjin's back. Reiyan barely dodges her follow-up attack, quickly realizing that her speed is beyond normal human limits. She must have some special power of her own. Despite Reiyan's best efforts, the battle takes a turn for the worse as Sarah lands a crushing punch, sending him sprawling across the arena. Dazed and battered, Reiyan clutches the ball, his mind swirling with confusion. The paper he read earlier, about a sister he doesn't even remember, the people he's fighting, the incomprehensible prize they're all struggling for. It all seems so meaningless. He looks over at Shinjin, who, despite being injured, stands unfazed. Reiyan wonders if any of this is truly worth it. As Jiren struggles to his feet, he makes a desperate plea for Reiyan to surrender the ball. But just as Jiren reaches out, Shinjin springs into action, pulling Sarah's weapon from his back as if it were nothing more than a minor inconvenience. Reiyan can hardly believe it. Is he for real? He thinks, astonished by Shinjin's resilience. Watching the unfolding chaos, Yura, ever the spectator, questions Reiyan's motivations. Why do you fight? What drives you to survive when you don't even know what you're fighting for? He asks, his voice carrying a tone of genuine curiosity. Still clutching the ball, Reiyan feels a sudden clarity. He realizes that he's searching for something, anything, to give his life meaning. He needs answers, and the only way to find them is to survive. Fueled by this newfound resolve, Reiyan suddenly bolts from the arena, sprinting straight toward the edge, fully prepared to leap into the unknown. Reiyan's actions were desperate, bordering on reckless. As he jumped, aiming to end the chaos in one decisive move, Sarah's quick reflexes kicked in. She grabbed him just in time, yanking him back from the brink. "If you're going to die, do it without the ball, you fool," she exclaimed, her voice a mix of frustration and relief as they both caught their breath. As they sat there, panting, Reiyan couldn't hold back his curiosity any longer. He asked Sarah, "Why do you want to keep fighting? Why do you want to live?" The question was heavy, loaded with the desperation they both felt. Sarah, however, wasn't ready to share her reasons. She snapped back, "Why should I explain myself to you?" Her irritation was clear. She wasn't about to expose her vulnerabilities. Meanwhile, Shinjin, ever focused, moved swiftly to deal with the weakened Jiren. With a decisive strike, he ended the old man's life. As Jiren lay on the ground, his life slipping away, he managed to mutter his last words to Sarah, "I let my guard down." His voice was filled with regret, the weight of his missed opportunity heavy in the air. Shinjin, with his usual cold demeanor, turned to Sarah and remarked, "You should have finished him when you had the chance." His words were blunt, devoid of any sympathy. Enraged by his indifference, Sarah launched herself at Shinjin, attacking him with all the strength she could muster. Reiyan watched, realizing that every move Shinjin made was part of a calculated plan, a plan that he had foreseen. As Jiren's life faded, he spoke one last time, revealing his fear. He talked about the children he would never see grow up, the wife who had passed away years ago. But as his life ebbed away, he admitted that none of it mattered anymore. The game had stripped away all their hopes and dreams, leaving them fighting for survival, driven by the primal fear of death. With only 3 minutes left in the round, a voice echoed through the arena, announcing the remaining time. Shinjin, still holding the ball, stated with certainty, "It's over." Sarah, realizing her dire situation, screamed in despair. "Am I supposed to just give up?" Her voice was laced with fear and frustration. Shinjin, ever the realist, suggested that giving up might be less painful than whatever fate awaited her at the hands of the game's creator. Sarah, knowing she was out of options, realized that her only chance of survival was to take down both Shinjin and Reiyan in the final minutes. But just as she moved to strike, Reiyan, thinking quickly, managed to block her attack with the ball. The impact was severe, shattering his bones, but it saved his life. The resilience of the ball impressed him, and he wondered about the power behind its creation. As the final seconds of the round ticked away, Shinjin offered Reiyan a hand, pulling him to his feet as they prepared for the next challenge. Reiyan then revealed to Shinjin that he had figured out Sarah's power. "She controls the wind," he explained, using it to enhance either her speed or strength, but she can only use one ability at a time. This insight could be the key to surviving the next round, giving them a crucial advantage. At a critical moment, as the tension in the arena peaked, Shinjin observed, "That's a tricky power to deal with." His tone was thoughtful, as if he was already planning his next move. Meanwhile, Sarah, her emotions overwhelming her, looked at Yura and asked, "Why are you doing this?" "I don't want to die." Her voice was filled with a quiet desperation. Reiyan, feeling a pang of sympathy, was about to comfort her, but Shinjin's sharp voice cut through the tension. "It's not over yet. We've got 1 minute left." His reminder was a harsh reality check, underscoring the unforgiving nature of the game. Sarah, glancing at the old man's peaceful face, thought, "Peace? That's not what I seek." She was caught in a battle between life and death, and the desperation she felt was pushing her to new limits. "Which side will I choose?" she wondered, as the countdown continued. "How badly do I want to survive?" Yura, ever observant, commented with a hint of amusement. This time, he picked an interesting bunch. His eyes scanned the battlefield, noting the tension in the air. Reiyan, feeling the shift in energy around him, responded with urgency, "Forget what I said before. Sarah's power, it's increasing. She's getting faster and stronger at the same time." Shinjin, always cautious and skeptical, narrowed his eyes. "How do you know?" he questioned, his voice laced with suspicion. "I can just see it," Reiyan replied, a touch of anxiety in his tone. He wished his instincts were wrong, but the growing intensity in Sarah's aura was undeniable. Shinjin, ever the strategist, kept his gaze locked on Sarah, analyzing her every move. The clock was ticking down, only 50 seconds left. Sarah, fully aware of the limited time, steeled herself and launched a full-force charge, her power blazing around her. Reiyan, caught off guard by the sudden surge in her strength, felt a wave of dread wash over him. He silently prayed they could hold out until the countdown ended. But before he could fully process the situation, Sarah's attack landed. She struck him hard in the stomach, knocking the wind out of him. He crumpled to the ground, gasping for air. "She's really strong." Her weapon drove through his chest, pain flaring through his body. But just as she moved in to finish him off, Shinjin acted swiftly. With a precise strike, he severed her right arm, forcing a scream of agony from Sarah as she turned a furious glare on him. "I can't let you harm my partner," Shinjin declared, his voice cold and unwavering. Through gritted teeth, Sarah spat out, "Why didn't you use your power earlier?" Shinjin allowed himself a small, confident smirk. "I like to keep my best moves hidden, unlike you, who showed everything in the first minute." Desperation overtook Sarah as she charged at him again, determined to land a decisive blow. But Shinjin was ready. With a swift and final motion, he ended her life with his flaming sword, the fire illuminating the grim determination in his eyes. As Sarah's body fell to the ground, the battle came to a close. Reiyan lay on the ground, his thoughts racing as he struggled to comprehend what had just happened. "I thought I was strong, but after witnessing Sarah and Shinjin, I realize there are far greater monsters in this game, he whispered, the reality of the situation sinking in. Sarah, now in her final moments, cried out in despair, tears streaming down her face. I can't die like this. Not in this damned game. Not killed by someone I don't even know. Her voice was thick with grief as she revealed her desperate search for her missing brother. Shinjin, with a chilling resolve, looked down at her. I'll find him, he promised, and with one swift motion, he ended her suffering by decapitating her. As her lifeless body fell, Yura clapped slowly, a satisfied smile on his face. Well done, he said, his voice filled with approval. You are the winners of the second round. Reiyan, still on the ground, began to heal from his wounds. Shinjin walked over and extended a hand to help him up. You did better than I expected, he admitted, a rare compliment from the usually stoic fighter. I liked your idea of jumping off the platform, but don't do it again. Next time, you might not be so lucky. Yura tried to interject, but Reiyan wasn't having it. Ignoring him completely, Reiyan made his way over to Sarah's lifeless body. With a heavy heart, he pulled out a piece of paper that Sarah had been carrying and began to read it aloud. Sarah Jones, 18 years old, searching for her brother. His voice, though steady, carried the weight of the promise he was about to make. He looked at Shinjin, determination blazing in his eyes. Remember her name, he urged. Shinjin, ever pragmatic, shrugged off Reiyan's sentimentality. It's just a promise to a dead woman, he remarked, his tone dismissive. But Reiyan wasn't going to back down. Nevertheless, it's a promise, he repeated firmly. If we cross paths with her brother, we will save him. Shinjin sighed, clearly annoyed by Reiyan's moral compass. You act too righteous for a game about death. And let's be real, if we do meet her brother, we'll probably have to kill him. Shinjin then moved to the old man's body, finding another piece of paper. He read it aloud. Jimin, 80 years old, with 3 kids, looking for a wife who's been dead for 10 years. Shinjin couldn't help but note that Jimin had voluntarily entered the God game, a concept that was evidently well known outside of the arena. Reiyan, however, was struck by the sheer strangeness of it all. Why would anyone willingly enter such a dangerous game? And what was the world outside this twisted game really like? Reiyan, eager to leave the unsettling scene behind, turned to Yura. Can we go now? But Yura wasn't done with them yet. Not quite, he said, handing them both a mysterious object. Before either of them could react, the world around them shifted, and they were thrust into a flashback. Reiyan found himself in a serene, open field, facing a much younger version of himself. The sun was shining, the air was warm, and a voice broke the calm. Guess what Mom gave me? It was his sister, Ichika, her voice full of excitement. She spoke of God, the one who had blessed them with a bountiful harvest but also brought about plagues and storms. Young Reiyan, curious and hopeful, asked if he could have one too. But Ichika, with the wisdom of an older sibling, told him that he had to earn it. As they walked back towards home, Reiyan suddenly shouted, "Wait!" Ichika turned, a puzzled look on her face. "Who are you?" she asked, but before Reiyan could respond, they were yanked back into the present. Reiyan's mind spun as he tried to process the abrupt shift in their reality. "What the hell did you do to us?" he demanded, his voice thick with both anger and confusion. Yura, clearly amused by the reaction, chuckled softly, a smirk playing on his lips. "Isn't it obvious? I gave you a gift, a reason to live." The vividness of the memory haunted Reiyan, leaving him shaken. Desperate for answers, he grabbed Yura by the collar, his eyes wide with urgency. Was that memory real? Yura didn't flinch. Instead, he casually flicked his finger, sending Reiyan sprawling backward. His voice turned cold, his previous amusement gone. "Only you can decide that. And don't touch me again." Reiyan, still reeling from the force of the flick and the implications of Yura's words, opened his mouth to ask another question. But Shinjin cut him off sharply. "Save it. Focus on what you can do to beat him. You should be grateful. You're one step closer to the answers you seek." With no time to dwell on Yura's cryptic response, They pushed forward through a door that led to the next round. On the other side, they found themselves inside a grand and ominous castle. The walls were lined with gleaming armor sets, each one meticulously displayed. Seated on an ornate throne at the far end of the room was a woman who regarded them with a mixture of boredom and curiosity. "More visitors," she mused, her eyes lingering on them before shifting back to the armor surrounding her. "Do you admire my collection? It belonged to my favorite contenders." "Contenders?" Reiyan asked, trying to understand the significance of her words. The woman smiled, a knowing gleam in her eye. "From previous God games, of course," she replied nonchalantly. Reiyan's heart skipped a beat, and he blurted out, "Previous God games?" The revelation shocked him, but it only seemed to amuse Shinjin. His patience wearing thin, he demanded, "Are you going to keep wasting our time?" The woman's smile widened into a grin, entertained by Shinjin's audacity. "Egotistical maniac, aren't you? I like that. The selfish fools who pick fights with deities are always the ones who survive the longest." Shinjin's eyes narrowed as he took a step forward, his voice firm. "What's your name?" "Inayo," she replied with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "goddess of war and destruction." Shinjin's expression remained unimpressed. "Never heard of you," he shot back, his dismissive tone making Inayo smile falter, her eyes flashing with anger. She called him a bug and declared that the God game had made her the judge of the next round. She waved her hand, making a large door appear in the room, and explained that it led to the Great Hall, where all the remaining contestants awaited. The next round required 3 participants, and the stakes had never been higher. With only one day to form a team of 3 for the upcoming round, Inayo offered food and rest if they wished, but time was short. Shinjin, wasting no time, snapped, "Let's go," and marched toward the door, leaving Reiyan behind. Reiyan hesitated, his thoughts still swirling. He turned to Inayo, still seated on her throne, and asked, "Have you seen a girl named Ichiko Azura?" Inayo's expression darkened, her amusement replaced with something far more sinister. "Do you think I'm your doormat?" she hissed, her tone dripping with disdain. "Are you really in a position to be worrying about someone else?" In an instant, she was in front of him, her eyes burning with an intense fury. "Make a deal with me," she proposed, her voice low and enticing. Reiyan, taken aback by her sudden proximity, asked cautiously, "Can judges even make deals with contestants?" "Yes," Inayo responded, a sly smile curving on her lips. "I'm sure you've sensed your divine powers by now. Otherwise, you wouldn't have survived this far. When a god selects a contestant as their champion, that champion gains a second divine power that aligns with their deity." Reiyan's mind raced with the possibilities. A second divine power? That could make me unstoppable, especially since my current abilities aren't suited for direct combat. "This is a chance I can't pass up," he replied carefully. "2 divine powers, wouldn't that be unfair?" Inayo let out a cold, mocking laugh. "Fair? What about this game has ever been fair? Fairness doesn't exist here. In this universe, deceit and strength rule. The champion who wins the favor of the gods gains the most abilities, but the truly strong will dominate with whatever they have, regardless of the odds." Reiyan considered her words. She's right. Someone who has mastered a single power could easily defeat someone with multiple powers, but no control. He recalled how Shinjin wielded his flames with lethal precision, and how Sarah enhanced her speed and strength seamlessly. But me? I've only scratched the surface of my powers. To win, I need to push myself further than ever before. Do you have what it takes? Inayo pressed, her smile widening as she studied his reaction. Yes, Reiyan answered, his voice firm with resolve. Inayo's eyes gleamed with a dangerous light. If you manage to kill 3 people before the 5th round, I'll make you my champion. Reiyan's eyes widened in shock. 3 kills? Inayo's expression hardened, her tone turning icy. Make it 5, she snapped. And if you succeed, I'll tell you more about your sister. Because if you become my champion, I'm betting on you to win this god game. Why choose me and not Shinjin? Reiyan asked, his voice laced with curiosity and a hint of suspicion. Who says you're the only one I'm considering? Inayo replied cryptically, her words sending a chill down Reiyan's spine. "I've only killed once, Shinjin. Now I have to do it 5 more times?" Reiyan thought, feeling the weight of the challenge. But the promise of finding out about his sister was too powerful to resist. "I accept," he said, his determination solidifying. Inayos' grin widened, pleased with his resolve. "I'll be watching." With those words echoing in his mind, Reiyan pushed through the door and found himself in a grand dining hall filled with other contestants. The atmosphere was unsettling. They were eating, laughing, as if they weren't facing life-or-death challenges. Reiyan's thoughts drifted to Shinjin. He's probably already out there, wasting no time in securing allies, Reiyan mused. His attention was suddenly drawn to a commotion nearby. Euron was trying to convince a girl to join his team, but she was having none of it. Insisting on her strength, the argument escalated quickly. With a swift, decisive move, she slammed Euron into a nearby table, her eyes blazing with intensity. As she resumed her meal with the focus of someone entirely in control, she growled, "Screw off, or I'll rip your arm off and beat you to death with it." Reiyan watched her, recognizing raw power and determination. "She's strong," he thought, his mind already made up. "I want her on our team," he decided, even though the challenge of convincing her loomed large. Reiyan was impressed, and that admiration pushed him to take a bold step. As the woman strode confidently through the hallways, Reiyan followed her, his curiosity and intent sharpening with every step. He kept his distance, careful not to draw attention, yet his presence was undeniable. The woman, however, was no fool. The moment she turned a corner, she spun around with the speed of a seasoned fighter. In a flash, she whipped out a Glock and aimed it directly at Reiyan's face, her eyes narrowing into a deadly glare. "Why are you following me?" she demanded, her voice steady but laced with a cold threat. Reiyan froze, raising his hands slightly, trying to show he meant no harm. "I saw you take down Yura. It was impressive," he admitted, his tone honest. "I wanted to ask if you'd join my team for the next round." Her eyes flickered with suspicion, not lowering the gun even an inch. "Are you a pervert like Euron or a useful teammate?" she asked, her words cutting like a blade. "I'd like to think I'm useful," Reiyan replied, choosing his words carefully. He knew one wrong move, one wrong word, could end this conversation, and possibly his life. The woman seemed to consider his answer, her eyes scanning him for any sign of deceit. "Prove it," she challenged, her tone daring him to step up. She led him into a larger, dimly lit room. Pointing to a massive guy lounging in the corner, she said, "That guy killed my partner in the second round. Beat him up, and I'll join your team." Reiyan hesitated, his mind racing. "If he killed your partner, how did you both survive the round?" he asked, trying to make sense of the situation. "I won the game," she replied coldly, her expression unreadable. "But God decided to spare that meathead. Why don't you ask him yourself?" Reiyan swallowed, realizing the gravity of the challenge before him. He needed to earn her respect, and this was the only way. "What's your name?" he asked, hoping to at least know who he was fighting for. She smirked, the corner of her mouth twisting upwards in a way that sent a chill down his spine. "I'll tell you mine if you bring that boulder to his knees." Reiyan inwardly sighed. Why does she have to make everything so complicated? But there was no turning back now. He squared his shoulders and approached the massive guy, feeling the weight of every eye in the room on him. The other contestants watched with keen interest, their gazes piercing through him as they analyzed every move, every breath. "I have nothing to hide but everything to gain from this fight," he thought, determination hardening his resolve. He came face to face with the big guy, feeling the tension in the air thicken. The man was a mountain of muscle, towering over Reiyan, but that didn't deter him. Reiyan stared directly into his opponent's eyes, refusing to back down, ready to do whatever it took to bring him down.